Yep. That's my pet name for you all now. So, what do we want to talk about today on this episode of Bloom Ladder's Chronicles of My Garden Exploits? Well, I'm here to talk to you guys about the most important topic that you guys are probably ever going to see me cover. The thing that I teased in the video before last that will separate you from the top tier gardeners. And this is a very simple concept. Everyone should know it. It's kind of like transplantation, right? This is the best way I think to describe it. Transplantation is when you take one plant and you put it somewhere else. Well, something else is actually going on there, right? Something that you might not even be aware of. The soil that you're using in your container, whatever medium you're growing in, will have a little microbiome. And when you take that soil and transplant it into somewhere else, you're taking one microbiome and you're exposing it to another. It's kind of like a cross between transplantation and inoculation. You're kind of doing both because there's, fungus that's in pretty much all medium. Microhizons usually, but there's lots of other fungi that are sometimes dormant, sometimes active in any given soil type or a medium type. And it's in the air, for instance, there's tons of it just floating around. So the hardest thing for gardeners to understand, the thing I've been working on for about 10 years now, is that you can actually transplant a microbiome with intention. What I mean by that is you can transplant a microbiome and you can have your plants do much better than they normally do because of the transplantation you did of the microbiome. What do I mean by that? I mean, you can take soil from this spot right here, say for instance, and go ahead and take it up to my garden, and you can use it in compost tea. That will take that microbiome profile and allow it to feed on the nutrients that's in the compost tea. Now, depending on if it's aerated or non-aerated, you're going to have different bacteria and microorganisms proliferate and grow strong. But that is a method of microbiome transplantation. That is a secret sauce that no one really knows about. I've wrote letters to UC Davis and UC Riverside, which report to be studying these types of things. And I've talked to the people, and they pick my brain, but they almost never want to work with me in any real way. And I get the feeling that they're just trying to monetize my research. And I don't want that to happen. Those people don't need to really get any leg up. There's no reason for them to have, some glorious recognition, showered upon them for little nuggets of wisdom I'm giving them. So I'm giving it away for free. I could monetize it, and I probably will monetize it on some level through a product in the future. But right now, everyone needs to know about it because it could feed the world. You could have huge yield increases for next to no effort. And what I'm going to do is outline some very basic concepts in microbiome transplantation right now. So, for instance, when I said, down there, that you could take a soil from over there and put in some compost tea, and depending on whether it's aerobic or anaerobic, you would have microorganisms proliferate. And then when you fed them, they would then kind of be incorporated into the microbial profile of the soil. That's all true. But where you get your soil and what you take is really important. And then where you put it, as far as anaerobic or aerobic, is also really important. So one thing I'll say is that for instance, you might think, hey, you know, the soil from 30 feet away, how much different could it be? Most of the time, not that different. But this wood pile has been here for a couple years now. And if I were to take the soil from underneath that wood pile, there will be much different microorganisms that are right there than there would be in my garden. And then there's a manure pile in the distance you can't see very well, I'm sure, but that's the same way. There's actually quite a bit of a difference. I'm not sure if you can see it, but off in the distance there's a downed tree. Same thing with over here. The microorganisms feeding on this wood are probably going to be more similar to the ones feeding on that tree than they will be in that garden, especially because that garden's been manipulated. Which means that the soil microorganisms in that garden are going to be much different than the ones right here, feeding on the roots of this tree, and underneath it's, you know, feeding on the foliage that it drops every year. So the short answer is that things are not what they seem when it comes to microbial transplantation. And the single greatest information I can give anyone about this subject is that microorganisms are 67 times more abundant in moist soil than dry soil. So, if you learn nothing from my channel, any of the videos I do about any of the gardening, know this, that if you take soil that has been moist for a long period of time, kind of never dries out, you are having, when you take that soil and you put it somewhere else, even just sprinkle it in the soil that you're feeding, you know, you're transplanting plants with, or soil that you're feeding, or even just sprinkle on top of plants that are already planted. Any of those are considered microbiome transplantation. And when you do that, you create a war. These microorganisms get uprooted and they get moved into a biome that's not familiar to them. They don't really belong there. So what happens is a competition for resources. And oftentimes the microorganisms will battle over these resources. And that battle results in secretions that plants love. Plants love the secretions of microorganisms. I'm having a hell of a time saying that word. But they also love the skeletons of wars, the bodies, the leftover remnants of dead microorganisms that couldn't cut it. And the more up and down you have, the more transplantation undulation you have, the greater this effect. And one other tidbit I want to say is that utilize the things that are around you. If you are constantly adding water to your bird feeder, or you have a leaky hose bib, you have a pond that doesn't dry out, these are all very good places to start with your microorganism transplantation and boosting your compost tea, both anaerobic and aerobic. I'm going to have a part 2 of this video, and I'm going to talk about microbiome libraries. And a microbiome library is pretty much what it sounds like, but I'm going to give you guys a little kind of crib notes on what I look for and what developing a good microbiome library is all about. Now, do with this information what you will, but what I hope you guys do with it is create some stellar gardens and grow a lot of food for people. Alright, thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys next time around. Alright, peace.
Avenue down the road to both of you. Did I go Dutch? This is too much with all the money.